Coming up on the program, I've got my jacket on. We've got garlic. It's fall. It's time to plant. I'll show you how. Our Jerusalem artichokes have not done good at all. We know why. We'll fix that. All that and more coming up today on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener is sponsored in part by, for all your non-GMO, heirloom, organic, vegetable, flowers, and herb seeds, visit dollarseed.com. Sioux Growing Supply, located in Wausau, Wisconsin, focusing on certified leaf compost, an excellent amendment for poor soil. With their new garden blend, improving soil structure in clay and sandy soil, great for creating new garden beds. Also available from Sioux's, pre-filled trays and pots with professional potting soil mix or organic rice hull-based potting soil mix. Bag and bulk of certified leaf compost also available. Visit SiouxGrowingSupply.com. Don't poison your soil with municipal water. Attach a body, mind, and soil hose and filter. Free shipping exclusively through the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. Just click on the body, mind, and soil icon. Authentic Haven brand soil conditioner for the home gardener. Easy to brew, 100% organic. Visit ManureTea.com. Rain Reserve. Reserving your rain, preserving our future. Rain Reserve, manufacturing of rainwater capturing capabilities. Visit rainreserve.com and use coupon code RAIN2016 to save 10% on your total purchase. Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. I'm Based on where you're located, you may have already planted or will be planting garlic. And if you're planting garlic in the south, there's other techniques besides what I'm going to show you in order to better get successful garlic bulbs come next mid-late spring. So we've come in here, and this is something we've never done before, meaning we've never worked the actual bed that we're going to plant garlic in. We've just removed some of the weeds in prior years, dug a hole with a trowel, planted them, and walked away, and had phenomenal success. So we've had the opportunity, had the time, so we've got, this bed's about 30-ish, 35 square feet. Then I've got another bed over there that when tomatoes get removed out of it, it'll be 80 square feet, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. So we've worked the soil here. I've not added any amendments. I did dump a pot of some compost out that was in a container. Other than that, we haven't added no nutrients. We will. If you're familiar with this bed, this is where our kale was that we planted very early in the spring. We had not worked the bed either. We simply just dug holes, planted our kale starts, and walked away. And it was very weedy, and we didn't do the maintenance on this bed that we have done on other beds that have very few weeds. So this bed has been very poor in production in the last 2 years. So we're going to add some sustained natural fertilizer to it to help boost it. Now, garlic does grow relatively decent in poor soil. One thing you want to be very conscious of and aware of is what's above you. Garlic will grow in partial shade, but the bulb size does decrease compared to garlic that is grown in full sun. We will plant this garlic in October. We will harvest it approximately third week in June to the second week in July. By that time, the tree that is above us will be in full leaves, but this bed with that tree in full leaves does receive about 8 hours of sunlight before the sun goes above the tree with the morning sun behind me. So what we're going to do, again, we're going to add some sustained fertilizer here. So it's made from pine bark and turkey droppings, so it's nothing that's physically been mined in the ground and dug up or anything like that. So we're just adding this on top. We won't work it in because it will go ahead and work itself in. We may work it in slightly. So that's the proper amount. All natural, organic. Okay, so now when it comes to planting the garlic, you can take, what you want to do is take your garlic bulbs, separate them about 2 or 3 days before you're going to plant, and pick out the largest cloves of the bulb that you are breaking apart. The largest cloves have the best chance of growing the largest bulbs in your garden. Now we pre-soak our garlic cloves, the largest ones, in Moo tea from Authentic Haven brand. That allows the bulb to get hydrated and nutrient packed. So when we put it in the ground, what we're wanting to do is not get massive top growth. We will have some top growth, but what we're wanting to do is plant this in the ground approximately 30 days before our first freeze, before that garlic goes into dormancy. By hydrating in Moo tea, you could do it with water. Water doesn't have the nutrient value that Moo tea does. You're giving the clove the nutrients that is required to get good root establishment before it goes into dormancy. You will have 2-3 inches of top growth. That's totally normal. And then the plant will go into dormancy, and then as the spring warms the soil, the spring sun warms the soil, it'll have that established roots that is required for it to start doing that top growth that we're all familiar with. So we are growing 4 different types of garlic: German Hardy, Georgia Crystal, Spanish Roja, and Purple Glazer. So the Spanish Roja, German Hardy, and Georgia Crystal we have grown for many years, and we continue to save the larger cloves. The Purple Glazer is a new variety that we have purchased, and we're going to try to grow that, and those are smaller cloves, but with everything that we're doing, we should have very nice size bulbs. So what we want to do here is we want to go ahead and plant this about 3 to 4 inches, 2 to 3 inches recommended. If you have really loose soil, like say a raised bed, go 4 inches. It's perfectly fine, deep. And again, we're covering the soil so it kind of has a buffer over that cold winter. The book will say, and certain websites will say every 6 inches you want to space them. I say every 10 inches to give that plant plenty of space to grow, and 10 inches spacing in the row, and then next row another 10 inches to space there. So all we're going to do, I'm going to make it real simple here since this ground is very loose. I'm just going to take the handle of my garden hoe, go about 3 inches down, take a large clove here, and should be, you want to plant it blunt side down, pointy side up. Some people get excited and just throw it in the ground, but that is the proper way. If you invert it, that's where the roots are at. The plant can't grow down, so we want to make sure, just as it came off the clove, the roots will grow there, start establishing under the ground, and then this will begin to have some top growth. So all we want to do is put it in the ground, and what I do is I go ahead and do my whole bed so I know where my spacing is, and then once the garlic is all planted, then I'll come in and smooth it all down and cover it all up. Then when it comes to mulching, that is a preference that we do not, that is something that we have never done. We attempted to do mulching the first 2 years when we were growing garlic incorrectly, and then when we were taught how to grow garlic correctly by Mark Brown, the curator of the St. Louis Garlic Festival in St. Louis, Missouri, we went ahead and planted and didn't mulch. We had one of the coldest years on record, and it grew phenomenal. And one of the things that some people will ask, well, can't I just go to the store, buy my garlic from the store, your grocery store, and plant it? You can, but there is some issues that will relate to that. You're going to have very small bulb development. A lot of that stuff is a neutral or generic variety that comes from Asia, and sometimes it has growth inhibitors sprayed on it. You don't know the variety. You don't know if it's a hard neck, soft neck. Well, you can if you open it up based on the stem in it, but you don't know the variety. That's very bland taste to it. So we grow a hard neck variety of garlic. We know where it's come from. We know what it is. We know how long it should grow for, and it has a phenomenal taste. Now you can buy it from a reputable sales store or online provider, as well as if farmers markets have it, or you have a friend who grows it successfully, you can ask for a couple of cloves or bulbs from them and plant it in your garden. So that's how you plant garlic. Once we get this bed done, we'll go over to the next bed. That's the 80 square foot bed that we'll have to wait partially on because of some tomatoes. So I got the one bed done. Now I'm working on this bed here. Now where the tomatoes are currently at, that is an additional portion of this bed. We're going to make here as an executive decision and leave those in because they'll probably phase out here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And we can still get the garlic planted in that area. It'll be fine. What this here's all worked, I can go and get the garlic planted. So with the garlic that we have grown year after year and saved, we've got some, and these are on the small side of the German Hardy, Georgia Crystal, and Spanish Roja. The purple glazer, as you can see here, I'll take some out, are on the much smaller size. For example, compared to one of our larger cloves here, you can see the difference in size. Now that's the way they came to us from the supplier. So the initial thought is, and what we've seen happen before is, we can plant, that is considered a large clove of the purple glazer. We can plant that, and the expectation is that it will grow larger than what the previous bulb that we received were, and we can get larger cloves, and in a year or 2 years we'll have cloves that size from that size. So that's intentions. So again, we're going to space these here every 10 inches, and we'll be able to get about 60 in this bed. We got, I think, 42 in that bed. Now you think that this is an incredible amount of garlic, and it is. About 160 some odd cloves is what we're putting in the ground, with expectations of getting 160 bulbs come mid-spring next year. But we do go through quite a lot, and that will dictate whether you go through a lot, you want to plant a lot. If you go through a little, you might want to avoid just planting it all together and buying those small amounts at the local farmer's market. So planting garlic, it's a lost vegetable or root crop, I think, that many people fail to plant in their garden, even though they use a lot of it. So as fall approaches, you may have plants in containers or even in the ground that you would like to overwinter. We're doing a new video series called Growing Indoors with the Eco Garden House, and what it is, the Eco Garden House is an all-inclusive grow tent greenhouse, indoor greenhouse, that you can put in a side room, basement, that has an irrigation system, ventilation, as well as lights of all spectrum, so you can grow year-round. And we're going to take at least this eggplant here, we might take a pepper plant as well, and overwinter it in the Eco Garden House. It's just like it's a tropical climate or midsummer in the Eco Garden House. So if you're doing this and you want to overwinter and you don't have an Eco Garden House to put them in, you can do the same procedure and put them next to a sunny window or under a grow light of some sort. But this is what we're going to do here with overwintering an eggplant. We've got it in a plastic root maker container. Air prunes the roots. You can see some of them coming out here. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove it out of this container. And the reason why we just don't take this container, bring it inside, set it by a window, or put it in the Eco Garden House is because this soil has been outside all summer long, and there is all kinds of insects, good and bad, in this soil. And if we just bring it in, they're going to go in the Eco Garden House, they're going to go in the house. So we want to get rid of this soil first. So we want to, oh my, okay. So we want to try to knock off as much of this soil from the roots as possible. This may take some time, so you want to do it right. You want to take your time, loosen the soil up, and get it knocked off of the root ball. Okay, so I got most of the dirt off. Now, you could take this and dunk this in a bucket of water and be really precise about it, but I want to just get the majority of the large clumps of dirt off and try to get up in there and try to get some of this other dirt that's in some of the roots. So right there, that's fine by me because we've got most of the roots off, got a good root structure on this eggplant. So what I'm going to do here, set that down, just going to take this soil, which is good, and toss it in the garden. Now, you can take, and we're going to reuse this container, or you can take another container and fill it up with potting soil and go that route. What we're going to do is we're going to use some professional potting soil from Sioux Growing Supply. I'm going to put a little at the bottom, have a base. There's my scooper there. Okay, and you can see this is good. This has got slow release fertilizer. It's got some perlite, vermiculite in it, some certified leaf compost, some peat moss. So it's going to give the plant, the eggplant, what it needs. So I'm just going to do little bit at the bottom. Then I'm going to take my eggplant and I am going to bury the stem slightly, not much. Try to get it back in the same position as it was. And again, this is good, clean soil potting mix that's going to really reduce the amount of potential insects that are going to be introduced inside. All right. Now with planting this, just like you would a plant at the nursery that you buy or start, I want to kind of fluff the roots out so they're not all in like one clump. So I'm going to spread them out a little bit here. And then pour more soil on it. All right. Do want to pack it down, make sure we get all the air pockets out of it. And we'll top it off, and then we'll do a little trimming of some of the leaves and here to help the plant out. All right. If you'd like to see the series on growing in the Eco Garden House, in the show notes we'll have the playlist of all that we have currently put out on that particular video series. Okay, so now firm it down. Now we want to look at the plant here itself. We do have a leaf here. It's got some damage, a little droopy, a little discolored. I'm just going to take and trim that off. It's not going to hurt the plant, just going to get rid of that. I've got another one here. Just trimming this back just slightly. Now we do have several clusters of flowers here that are going to open up. So we'll keep that in mind. And at the bottom here, I'm just going to trim off some of this yellow stuff here. And it looks pretty good. Trim some more off at the bottom. And we've repotted it. Now it's time to take it in the Eco Garden House. So we've brought our eggplant in. Since we've brought it in and repotted it, we've got some flowers here, so that's a good sign. Now, eggplant is a self-pollinator, which means it will pollinate itself. We don't need pollinators to pollinate it, so that's an advantage putting in the Eco Garden House. This here is the Eco Garden House, an all-inclusive indoor grow room, greenhouse. Just going to open this up here. We've already got a number of things planted in here. We've got tomatoes, lettuce, radishes, basil, peppers planted. So what we'll do here, this is a seed tray start that I'm working on. I'm going to put the eggplant over here. Now, what you can do, we remove the soil from outside that was setting outside. We put in good professional potting soil from Sioux Growing Supply. You can also take and flip your plants upside down before you repot it and blast it with water to make sure there's no insects. We've checked that. We didn't have to go with that route, but that'll work well. Now we're just going to slide in here and kind of watch the light. We'll have to raise and lower the light with the crank, but we can have eggplant all winter long, and then come the spring, we can just simply bring that back out, harden it off, get it acclimated to the outdoor temperature, and we've already got an eggplant ready to go and producing well before the starts would even have a chance to go in the ground. So if you're not familiar with the Eco Garden House, that link of that growing series is in the show notes below. So in overwintering, now if you don't have an Eco Garden House, you could put this in a basement window or a 3-season porch, something like that. You would, if you don't want fruit production, you would want to keep it damp or on the drier side so it can kind of go into dormancy, and that will work on peppers as well. So we are in our Jerusalem artichoke, or what once was our Jerusalem artichoke bed. All of this here used to be Jerusalem artichokes, and I have dug them up. And we've made Jerusalem artichoke relish, we've made fermented Jerusalem artichokes. Well, what has occurred is all of these were very, very small roots, and about the size of marbles or peas was the size of the roots. Now, if you're familiar with what Jerusalem artichokes are, they're a root crop that is low in starch, good for diabetics. You don't have to cook to eat them, and they should be about, each plant should give you about 3 to 5, maybe 6 pounds of roots for you to eat. Well, we planted these about 5 years ago, and we'd harvest a little here and a little there, but never went through the entire bed. Well, what we had found this year was a lot of the plants up in this area, as we got gradually back to the fence, were 2-3 foot tall, and they were dying out mid to late August, which is not common for them. They should be, all of them should be like this, you know, 7-8 foot tall, some of them 12. We've had 12-14 foot tall ones, and they should be flowering at this time of year, and then they'll die back with the first frost and you can harvest them. Well, what we have kind of determined and found when digging the artichokes up were the previous year's roots feed this year's top growth, and either there were so many compacted in here that it robbed each plant of the nutrients and they just kept getting smaller and smaller. That probably was the case. So what we're going to do here is we may have to purchase more Jerusalem artichokes in the spring. But we've got these flowering here, and that's what they're related to they're related to the sunflower. Jerusalem artichokes are related to the sunflower as well as the yacon. So what we're going to do here is we're going to finish digging up the bed here, and I've left some of these large ones strategically for this purpose. We're going to dig them up, put them all in the box here, see what we have, take the largest ones and start reseeding this bed. We're in the beginning portions of October. We can bury them about 4 inches deep. They'll be fine, they'll go dormant, and they'll come back next spring, and we'll have plenty of spacing on these, because before they were literally, you know, just right up next to one another. So we're going to start digging these up, see if we can find some large ones and start replanting. The grade here is all up and down. I don't care, because this is one of these beds, it's a perennial bed. We don't need it leveled, we don't need it tilled. We're just going to stick them in the ground. They'll grow wild and natural. So we'll start with this here. You can already see one root here. I'm going to snap it off. That's above the ground. That's already trying to grow a plant, and this is green, just like because the potatoes get green because of sun exposure. Same thing's happening here. So we're just going to throw everything in the box. I'm going to start digging here, and then we'll decide what we have. And we've had a lot of rain, so all right. So for example, you can see here, that was the previous root of last year that has fed the growth on this particular plant. This is what a lot of these roots should look like. When I was digging prior up in this area, this is what a lot of the roots I was getting. That can be used for cooking, eating, whatever we want to do with it. This here, I can bust off, and I can actually take, and what I'm going to do here is I'll just plant this whole thing as a new growth, because most likely what's going to happen is that's going to be a growth tip, that'll be a growth tip, that'll be a growth tip. I'll break that off. A lot of these nodules will be root tips, and we'll get them in the ground, and if they do have a little top growth, they're just going to die back and they'll go into dormancy and they'll be fine. So I'm going to dig the rest of these up, we'll see where we're at, and then we'll start spacing these out so we can reestablish our Jerusalem artichoke bed. Okay, so we went ahead and dug the rest of them out. It was a smart decision on my part to leave those tall ones in, because those developed larger tubers, and this is just a partial example of what they should look like in a perfect scenario. They're long roots, good dense roots, good tubers. Now essentially each one of these plants again should produce 3 to 8 pounds based on the plant, the nutrients, and all the variables that go along with it. So what we're going to do, I took and put the rest in a bucket here, and I did run some water over them to clean them up. Now if you're doing this scenario, you don't have to clean them up. I'm doing it so you can see what they look like, as well as I can determine which is the largest ones, which we will replant. And you're thinking, well, won't they grow some this year? They very well might. But if they were left in the ground, if we didn't dig this bed up, they would have just went in the ground, stayed in the ground until spring next year, and then began to grow again. So I don't think that we're going to have any hurt whatsoever. These are going to regenerate, grow fine. So what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the biggest ones, the largest ones. So something in that size there will replant. And as I was talking about earlier, that a lot of the tubers that were on the high end here that I had already harvested, that would have been considered a very large one by the standards that we were digging up. Now that I've left some of the other ones in, and these had already died back, so we didn't, dig them up as they were green. They had already died back, so it was an indication that one, something was wrong, and two, they were done growing. So that size there was about the average size. Now that I've saved some of these larger ones, I can replant them, and that's what we're going to do. So when we're planting these, I'm going about 4 inches deep, 4 or 5 inches deep, just to give them some insulation and kind of get them in dormancy. And we're going 1 foot, and then 1 foot across, 1 foot from hole to hole or plant to plant, and then 1 foot spacing from row to row. And that's how we are replanting the bed. There's other things you can do with Jerusalem artichokes. Now, if you're going to dig them up, one, they'll stay in the ground over winter. And if you are in a place where it doesn't freeze solid, you can come in and dig them up as you need. Other people, cultures, for example, the Native Americans, the Amish, they will, in carrot situation, they'll mound feet of shredded leaves on top of the carrot bed, and then they'll just move the leaves back and extract the carrots as they need them, basically like an outdoor refrigerator. That is something you could do in this scenario as well. You can also take a 5-gallon bucket and layer the Jerusalem artichokes in them with soil between them and keep them in the basement or a cool place where you can harvest them as you need them through the winter months. Because if you just take this bucket or take some of these, bring them inside, within 2 or 3 days they dry up and they shrivel up and they're not useful. You could also put them in a bag we found, in an airtight bag, zip top bag, and put them in the crispy refrigerator. They'll last for about 2 weeks, sometimes longer based on the conditions, but just keep that in mind. And you can make hash browns out of these, eat them raw, a lot of different things you can do with them. So what we're going to do here, again, this was the bed that once were very productive Jerusalem artichokes. So I'm just going to take, and every foot, I'm going to dig a hole, and I'm just simply going to take the root that we harvested, throw it in a hole, and cover it up. And then it'll come up next spring, just like the similarity that you would a potato in the spring. You plant it, dig it deep, and it'll grow up. So that's what we're going to do here. And what other Jerusalem artichokes we have left over, we will save them. We'll either ferment them or do other storage methods for them. Thanks for joining me. Join me again next time for more organic gardening and food preserving. I'm Joy Baird, and this has been the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.